Deep in his heart, every man longs for a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. This is one of my favorite quotes about masculinity, and if you've been following us for very long, you've heard it from me 1,000 times. Today, I'm honored and have the privilege of talking with the author of that quote and one of my top 5 recommended books on masculinity, Wild at Heart. His name is John Eldridge. We talk about the secret to a man's soul, the single greatest question every man needs to have answered, society's attack on gender, how to embrace authentic masculinity, and why every man is wild at heart.
You're a man of action. You live life to the fullest, embrace your fears, and boldly chart your own path. When life knocks you down, you get back up one more time, every time. You are not easily deterred or defeated. Rugged, resilient, strong. This is your life. This is who you are. This is who you will become. At the end of the day, and after all is said and done, you can call yourself a man.
Men, what is going on today? My name is Ryan Mickler, and I am the host of this podcast, The Order of Man. I am stoked to be joining with you today, as I always am, but particularly today, since I have one of my favorite authors on the show, and a man who has an incredible handle on what we as men are experiencing in life. If you are new to the show today, you picked a great one to join us on. We are interviewing the world's most successful men. We're extracting their lessons, their insights, their ideas. We're delivering them straight to you. We've had some incredible guests. I think most of you can agree on the show. If you haven't gone back and listened to shows like Jocko Willink, Tim Kennedy, Andy Frisella, Brett McKay, so many more, I'd encourage you to go back and tune into those shows. And if you would, please also make sure to leave us a rating and review, as I read every single one of those, and of course, appreciate it when you do. Now, I'm not going to bombard you with announcements today. We always have a lot going on. Sometimes it seems like too much, but right now I've got my head down on a couple of different things. Number one is our live meetup in Nashville, January 26th and 27th. And it's also going to be a book launch party for the book that comes out in February. So make sure, if you would, go check that out and join us. Register at orderofman.com/Nashville. That's orderofman.com/Nashville. Now I want to introduce you to my guest. Again, I'm honored to have him on the show. His name is John Eldridge. When I set out on this journey to become a better man, his book, Wild at Heart, was one of my go-to resources for an understanding of who I am as a man and how men show up in this world. Now, at the time, I never thought that I'd actually have the chance to have a conversation with him, but after some back and forth and getting our schedules pinned down, we were finally able to lock something in. John is an author, a counselor, a teacher. He's been working with men and teaching them how to transform their lives for more than 2 decades. It's really interesting to see that the book Wild at Heart still strikes a nerve with me and thousands of men across the world more than 15 years after he wrote it. This is a testament to John's understanding of what we as men are really after in our lives and how to become the men that we are meant to be. John, welcome to the show. So glad to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Really glad to be with you.
Wild at Heart, which is the discussion that we're going to have today, is one of my favorite books on the topic of masculinity and one that I recommend to all the guys that I talk with. I'm thinking about this. It's actually been over 15 years since you wrote this book, but I think it continues to be something that is very impactful in men's lives. What do you attribute the duration of popularity of this book to?
Well, I think because it hit on some really universal themes. One of the cool stories of Wild at Heart is not just that it's kind of carried on over the years, but it's in a bunch of foreign languages in countries that you'd think, oh, that's not going to work, culturally. Like, it's in Slovakia. It's the best-selling book for men in Slovakia.
Interesting.
It's in Colombia. It's being used down in the Amazon. I mean, just places that you just go, okay, hang on a second. Something in Wild at Heart touched a chord that seems pretty universal to guys.
And what do you think that is?
I think, first off, giving guys permission to be men. I think there's a lot of books out there that have advice, and there's a lot of books out there with here's what you ought to be, but pressure doesn't exactly inspire. There's something in the realm of permission to get in touch with your own passions, get in touch with your core, being as a man, and feel free to live from that. I think that's one of the deep things guys are really connecting with.
Why do you think it's been so difficult? Because I hear some people will say things like there's an attack on masculinity, and others will say, well, it's just the nature of modern times. What do you think that is attributed to?
Oh, no. We are in a time of massive gender collapse. It's not just an attack on masculinity, because it's also an attack on femininity. I mean, I was looking at a cover story of a magazine earlier this year on gender, and the picture was about 8 young people, young millennials in their 20s. And the spectrum was you might be male, you might be female, you might be transgendered, you might be lesbian, you might be gay, you might be queer. And the message that the world has embraced right now is that gender is a spectrum. It's not a fixed thing. It's fluid, it's movable, and you can kind of choose what you want your gender expression to be. So even the idea of masculinity now is something that it's not so much attacked as it's just completely dismissed.
Why do you think that's the way that it is? I mean, we can talk a lot about whether it's governments or the media or big business. I mean, there's a lot of things that are at play here, but why do you think in general there is this notion and gravitation towards gender fluidity?
Well, these are really good questions, by the way, because we're diving straight into some of the deepest things in life.
We don't mess around here. We get right into it.
No, you don't. Okay, so you have to understand that on 2 levels. First off, human brokenness is more profound right now than it may have ever been on the earth. You just take incidences, for example, of sexual abuse, sexual trauma early in life. It has increased over the past century, and that does serious damage to your view of your gender, who you are, either as a man or as a woman. So you have to understand the effect of trauma on a widespread cultural basis, both for men and women, particularly sexual trauma. But you also have to understand, if you believe in any kind of battle, there is a massive war against humanity. I mean, there is real evil, and evil hates humanity, and it is attacking us in the core of our being, which I think gender is absolutely core to the human race. Like everything you do as a man or you do as a woman. Like masculinity is so core to how men are created that when evil attacks us there, it brings in a level of confusion and doubt. And then you just add the sociological layer. You just add the crisis of fatherlessness. Gender identity is bestowed by the father. Boys look to their dad or to the key man in their life to learn who they are as men. They can't get it from their moms. They can't get it from other boys. They sure can't get it from girls, although they try. And so you also just have that sociological layer of the crisis of fatherhood. So many men growing up without a real dad in their life. You put those things together and it's a train wreck.
Yeah, it's really interesting. One of the chapters in the book, you actually talk about this with the rise of boys being raised without fathers, and that was me. I was raised primarily by my mother, and my sister was in the picture. And it was really fascinating to go through this chapter in the book and realize in a way that I wanted to be free from her little boy, if you will. Yep. And that chapter resonated with me so much so that I remember getting on the phone with my mom not long after I originally read the book, and I've read it multiple times now, and she would call me honey and sweetie and sweetheart. And for the first time, I realized, like, that's not who I want to be. That's not who I identify as a man. And so I remember having the conversation of, please don't use those words anymore, because I do want to be free. I do want to be masculine. And you're keeping me here as a little boy, it seemed like.
Wow, that's huge. That's just huge.
Yeah, really interesting perspective. You know, you also talk about with this attack, you know, I look at pornography, for example, and then also just the breakdown of the family unit and society's attack on the family. Do you see those as being key perpetrators, I guess, on this attack as well?
Well, okay, so here, this is going to help guys understand the pornography thing, because the core issues of pornography have nothing to do with sex. The experience of coming alive as a man is so rare in our culture right now that when a guy experiences pornography, I mean, it fires things inside of us.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure.
Right? And there's a sense of aliveness that he does not experience anywhere else in his life, not in his work, not in his friendships, not maybe at church if he's into that, not at home. And so the core issue is the more that a man is wholehearted as a man, the more that he knows who he is, and he has a deep, settled experience of being alive as a man, pornography begins to look like cotton candy. Like it doesn't work. It's not what I'm looking for. It's a false high. It's like meth.
How does a man then begin to know who he is?
Well, you got to start in a couple places. And actually, like you asked, why did you think Wild at Hearts continue to do so well as a book? I think because the very first thing it does for guys, the subtitle is Discovering the Secret of a Man's Soul. The first thing to say to guys is you have an interior world, and your inner world is more important than your external world. And most of the stuff online, if you look up, how to be a real man or, 7 tips for growing as a man, most of it's external stuff. It's learn to work on your car or learn to handle money, that kind of thing. Good things,
sure,
by the way.
Sure.
But Wild at Heart and books like it that are popular, that do well, help men with their inner world. So when you ask, what does it mean to find out who you really are as a man, we got to start with the interior life. And we got to back up to little boys, and you got to say every little boy is basically asking one question. He's asking, do I have what it takes? The search for validation fuels a man's behavior just about every day of his life. Like right now in this podcast, I'm very aware of, as a man, I want to do very well. The search for validation is huge. Now, as a little boy, do I have what it takes? And whether he gets a good answer to that question is just huge. So how do I kind of know who I am as a man, come alive as a man? Who answered your question? Now, for you, it was your mom. And it was sweetie and sweetheart and honey. And while those are very endearing, by the way, that's precious stuff, it doesn't answer the question. It tells the boy he's sweet. It tells the boy he's tender, but it does not tell the boy that he has what it takes, right?
Sure.
Okay. So for guys listening to this and they're going, oh man, how did you get your question answered? Did your dad answer it? And a lot of guys didn't have a dad there to answer it, or if their dad was there, they got a horrible answer. They got, my dad used to call me worthless. Now, it was partly playful. He was also kind of a dick sometimes, but but the thing is, you tell a boy that enough over the course of his life, hey, worthless, is what he would say to me when I'd walk in the room. That begins to answer the question, do I have what it takes? No, you don't have what it takes. And so this core question, am I a man? You got to start with who has named you, who got to answer that question, so that they can do like you did with your mom. You got to say, you know what? I actually reject that answer. I'm not just sweet. I'm not just a good boy. I'm not soft. You can begin to reject that answer and you begin to search for a real one.
It's really fascinating that you talk about this because I have made a commitment to coach my boys' baseball, football, and basketball teams, and we just got into basketball. And it's really interesting to watch my 2 oldest boys who, my 6-year-old, they don't keep score at this age. At 9, they do. At 6, they don't. And it was really funny. We just had our last basketball game. After the game was over, the 6-year-old boys immediately, first question after the game was over, Coach, who won? Which I think, to your point, is a version of asking, do I have what it takes? Did I beat the other team? Did I do what I needed to do?
Totally. Exactly. Right. And so in a culture where everybody gets a trophy, not helpful. Not helpful, because it doesn't bring the affirmation he's looking for. Who won? Did we kill him? Did we do it? Like, am I powerful is another way of saying the same question. Am I powerful? A man wants his words to be powerful. He wants his actions to be powerful. He wants his decisions to matter. And you get into it like a corporate job, man, and you don't get to make decisions. And your words, you got to be really careful with your words. The world emasculates men. And so like in a ball game like that, you're looking for some place to know, did we do it? Did we kill him? Am I powerful? Did we win? Right?
Let's look at the other side of this, because I know that there's going to be people saying this, and I can even hear this, is that looking to some sort of external metric or validation of a man's worthiness is an unhealthy practice. What are your thoughts there?
Yes and no. Okay, so yeah, how much money you make doesn't matter.
Right.
How beautiful your date is doesn't matter. Some of those things are false, and the world is full of it. I was just watching the World Series and some of the commercials on there. I mean, they know who's watching, right? So most of the commercials are just designed for men. Matthew McConaughey's driving this new, I think it's a Lincoln, and he's dressed to the T.
Right, and he's got the ladies and everything else.
Exactly. And the message is, if you get that, you're a man. So that stuff's not helpful. That is the world's version of it. But yes, of course there are external metrics in the sense of, does your life matter? Are you making a difference? What is your impact on the world? Again, World Series commercials, the new Call of Duty video game commercial. It is brilliant. It is so brilliant because it just appeals to the core of men, and it's a World War II type battle video game, and the idea being, it's talking about brotherhood and courage and valor.
Right.
Okay, that stuff is huge. They are tapping into the spine of men. Like, yeah, you want your life to matter. Do I live with courage? Do I live with valor? Do I have brotherhood in my life? Some of those external things are important to ask.
Yeah, this makes total sense. And I think part of the reason why this book has done so well, and of course, even your continued work and my work as well, because I think to some degree we recognize this. I want to go back because you talked about going to the internal versus external. I think most men probably look to external sources, external validation, get the car, get the money, get the girl, get the vacations, get the house, get the thing, right?
Yep.
Is it that it's just more time consuming or harder, or they don't know how to turn inside versus outside? Why is it such a challenge for men to turn inwards?
Well, there's a couple things. One is fear. Fear is big. And the other is he probably doesn't have a guide. Men were meant to be fathered. We were meant to be initiated. The ideal experience, and you look back through, this is just so true over culture and over history. Whether you look at the Vikings or the Irian Jaya in New Guinea, or you just take any people group, they had a means of initiating boys. And it was older men showing the younger men and the boys how to do it. And so especially when you're talking about your inner world, okay, so fear and the lack of a guide. Because the core issue is this: every man has a wounded heart. And the wounds that he's taken are primarily in the place of validation. No, you don't have what it takes, and I could, the stories that I have from counseling guys are pretty horrific, but the violence, the sexual assault, the abandonment, the heinous things done and said to boys in their journey to become men, every man's got a wound in his soul. Every man does. You don't get through this war without it. And to go back into that wound and say, and it's almost always a father wound, by the way, because again, the father was meant to bestow the masculine identity. To go back into that wound feels like a scary thing. It feels like, man, I just feel weak when I'm there. I don't know what to do with it.
It's a risk, right?
It's a big risk. And that's why I write. That's why you do your podcast. Like, we're trying to offer a guide. We're trying to help guys say, no, you can do this. You can do this. The fight for your heart is your biggest fight. And as you begin to get more and more of your heart back, you are going to be an unstoppable force. So it is totally worth the risk.
If you've never had any sort of rite of passage, and I'll just go back to my childhood, I didn't have this. My dad wasn't around to tell me you're a man now. But I got a lot of that through my time playing sports in high school. My mom fortunately had enough insight and knowledge and ideas to put me in sports with other men and boys. I joined the military when I was 18 years old and got a lot of it there. But how does a man who never received some sort of passage receive this or create this for himself?
Yeah, I think you just gave a couple big examples. It's available. It's available, guys. It's available. But you do have to be intentional. And some of it comes through the company of other men. And so get yourself in the company of good men. If it's guys going out bird hunting, or if it's guys who are fixing cars in a shop, or if it's guys who love to do a hike every weekend and they love to just go into the mountains or whatever. It could be down at the Y shooting hoops. Like, get yourself in the context where that can take place. But the issue we're kind of skirting around here a little bit is, and I thought Dennis Prager was fascinating on this. He's a Jewish scholar, really brilliant guy, and he was trying to explain the Old Testament. And he said the reason that God is presented as Father has almost entirely to do with the fact that young men need initiation. And so he was really dialed into the sociological realities of the need for initiation, the failure of modern era to offer it. And his whole point, I think, is very, very true, is that there is a father who can speak into your life and who can provide initiation experiences if you will let him. And so, we're obviously into faith questions and issues like that, but that's a big, big offer, frankly, of the gospel, is you can still be fathered.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes total sense. And if I can add one more suggestion and thought in here, one of the things that I've been really involved with lately is teaching young men in our church and in our neighborhood. And there's also some sort of joy and satisfaction of helping a lot of these boys who frankly won't get it outside of their opportunity to engage with me. There is an opportunity for me to participate in that to a degree as well. And I would just tell every man who's listening, like, get involved in the community, because there are other young boys and young men who need what you may not have had growing up.
Yeah, and that's so good. That's so good, because the initiation will take place as you're offering it. And also just ask yourself, like, where would you love to grow? Where would you love to be strengthened? If you're the kind of guy that wasn't raised around sports, maybe you'd like to go take a class and learn how to, shoot a bow, throw a curveball. Like, go deliberately into those places that you want to get stronger. If you never had woodshop in school as a kid, there's a lot of classes on that offered in City College now in the evening. So you can put yourself into those training experiences that will strengthen your inner life.
And this is so valuable. I've got my first hunt. I've never hunted in my life. I've got my first hunt coming up next week. Later in the year, I'm going to Tim Kennedy's sheepdog response training, where I'll get to shoot guns and roll around on the mat with him and other guys. Like, I'm really excited about this kind of stuff because, yes, it pushes me outside of my comfort zone, but it's exactly what I think is needed to develop more masculinity in my life.
Yeah, I love that. I love that intentionality. Chase it. Go find it.
Gentlemen, just a quick timeout. The battle that John has referenced in this podcast is one that I set out on for myself years ago. What I found was there was no battle plan, no guidance, no direction, and no one to take this journey of becoming a better man with me. So I actually just set out to create it. And that's exactly what I did when I created the Iron Council. This is our exclusive brotherhood dedicated to giving you the tools and the resources and the battle plan required to thrive in your life. And when you join us, you'll be banding together with brothers in arms who are in the same battle as you. The battle for your career, the battle for your marriage and family, and the battle for your life. So if you're ready to join us, gain the knowledge and the skills and the tools to arm yourself with the resources that you're going to need to engage in this fight, you can join us inside of the Iron Council at orderofman.com/Iron Council. Again, that's orderofman.com/Iron Council. Now let's get back to the conversation with John. One of the other things that you had mentioned in the book, and I can't remember exactly where it is in the book, but you talk about essentially doing the opposite, and that's probably not the right word, but doing the opposite of what you're accustomed to. So if you're accustomed to being the guy that sits in the corner and doesn't really share any of his insights or wording, then be the guy who actually now goes out and shares and is more vocal about his ideas. I think sometimes just doing something different than you've ever done or have done.
Yeah, no, this is huge. Because of the lack of validation and because of the wounding, because of the scripts that we were handed, in school, in sports, whatever, most men are now faking it. Most of what you meet when you meet a man is a brilliant disguise. In the book, I call it the poser. Every guy has perfected the poser. And so for one guy, he's really smart. And for another guy, he's really funny. And for another guy, he's just always silent. And another guy, he's awesome at sports, and that's what he leads with. But the point is, you're hiding behind the poser. And when I talk about do the opposite, you have these inclinations, like you've always got to be in control. You got to let that go if you want to find a genuine strength. If you want to grow in genuine courage and strength, you've got to stop doing the things you do to hide. So stop cracking jokes all the time. You don't have to be the funny guy all the time.
Yeah.
And, or for another guy, like you were saying, if you're just silent and you never speak up, it's time to speak up. You're hiding behind that. And so the idea of doing the opposite of what you normally do is the idea of coming out of hiding.
One of the quotes that you had mentioned in the book, I actually wrote this down in my notes as I was preparing for our conversation. It says, "The world of posers is shaken by a real man, and they'll do whatever they can to get you back in line." Now, I think this is kind of talking about the inverse relationship, right? Somebody else being a poser and our tendency to fall in line with what somebody else believes about us or the way that we should act.
Oh, totally. I had lunch with a guy last week who's a really good guy. And we were chatting about hunting because he happens to be really into hunting. But after lunch, I found myself totally exhausted. I was just fried. And I had to ask myself, why? And the reason is this, is because I had to hide most of who I am to hang out with this guy. In other words, he's got a way of doing life. He's got a chit chat. He's got a banter. And the message is you stay within this boundary. Don't talk about heavy stuff. Definitely don't start talking about God, and don't go outside this boundary. And I was so exhausted afterwards of trying to live within his little circle. And guys, the world is full of this stuff. You work with posers. You go to church with posers. Your family reunions are full of posers. And the pull to be a poser yourself is pretty strong and something you have to intentionally resist.
And you talk about also, and I'm just paraphrasing here, but stepping into your strength and knowing that people are going to be intimidated by you being fully who you are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so what? One of the most disruptive things one of my mentors said to me years and years ago, because I was hiding, I was posing, I was, just doing all that stuff every guy does. And here's what he said to me. He says, let people feel the weight of who you are and let them deal with it. And to this day, that reverberates in my soul. You have a strength to offer the world. You are a man. Offer it. And don't be so worried about how they handle it. They may not be able to handle it. That's okay. Be who you are.
I like that because I've always thought, people are going to respond, but the way that they respond to what you're doing is just a representation of the way they feel and who they are. It doesn't really say anything about who you are.
Totally. And the world is threatened by a real man. I mean, let's just be honest. You're in a staff meeting at work and everybody's just, kissing up to the boss and you raise your hand and say, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think this company ought to go in that direction. People are going to be threatened by that. People are threatened by a genuine strength. But the thing is that the world needs a genuine strength. There is a quality to masculinity that I think is powerfully pictured in the firemen and the pararescue, the guys who went up the stairs of the World Trade Center when everybody else was running down on 9/11. Everybody was piling down those stairwells, obviously, to try and get out of there. But there was a group of guys who went up. And that choice of courage and self-sacrifice is the essence of masculinity.
It's such a good point. What's really funny is it seems to me that society and media and the government and everybody else will ridicule and mock masculinity until something goes wrong. And you look around and you see when things go wrong. I think of pictures and stories that I heard about these hurricanes in Texas and Florida and Puerto Rico. And you see these authentic men doing what it is men do. And nobody complains when things are going wrong. It's only when things are perfect. It's kind of interesting.
I love that. There was a fabulous story on they called it the Cajun Navy. And during the flooding down in Texas, dudes, regular dudes, showed up with their boats. And they were guys that knew how to handle the water. They knew how to tie a knot. They knew how to pull somebody out. They knew how to navigate through, because they've been doing it all their life, right? These are fishermen. These are guys who are familiar with boats. And it was thousands of just guys in their small personal craft that performed most of the rescues. And that's what you're saying. It's like the world doesn't want masculinity until it needs it. And then it's like, please show up, please rescue us.
Yeah, is this the notion of authentic masculinity, or is it deeper than this or something else? Help me understand that.
Yeah, it is. Because having a genuine strength to offer the world is what it means to be a man. And for those guys, it was expressing it in courage and the handling of a boat, but it can be expressed in so many different ways. What we're talking about is we're talking about the masculine journey. And we're talking about coming out from the false self, putting down the poser, seeking the initiation that you need as a man to grow as a man, and offering what you have to the world.
So one of my favorite quotes, I quote this all the time. The guys are going to hear this and they're going to roll their eyes because I say it all the time. And that's your quote. And it's, deep in his heart, every man longs for a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. I'd like to break down each one of these. When you're talking about a battle to fight, what types of battles are we talking about here that men can engage in?
Oh my gosh, they're coming at you every day. They are coming at you every day. Every guy wakes up to this. You got battles in your home, battles for relationship. If you want friendship, you have to fight for it. If you want a marriage, you have to fight for it. If you have kids, Ryan, you have to fight for their hearts. And fight for it is the only best description, because there's the busyness. There's the self-absorption. There's the, oh man, I don't want to have this conversation tonight. I just want to watch the game. There's the doubt. Do I have what it takes to be a good father? Do I have what it takes to handle my wife's emotions? Do I have what it takes to talk to my 16-year-old daughter about her boyfriend? The reason we avoid these places is usually fear and self-preservation. And so they are battles because you have to operate in courage to move into those places. There's battles at work. There's battles in your community. If your kids are in school, I guarantee you there's a fight for their education. And then how about your dreams? How about your own dreams of what you want your life to be like? How about some of those things you've wanted to chase or to see happen? You're going to have to fight for your dreams. And every one of these is a place to develop the warrior in you.
I really like that you use that term battle, because I think it's very easy for us to get into the monotonous grind of life, and we've got this task and this chore, and we've got to take the trash out, and we've got to do X and Y and Z. And I know for me personally, when I framed it as a battle, for example, I wake up in the morning and don't want to roll out of bed, and I look at my mission as being a protector, a provider, and a presider to my family and those that I have an obligation for. I think I'm more equipped mentally to go into the battle of just waking up and going into the gym, because I look at it as something engaging versus something I'm not even remotely interested in participating in.
Yeah. See, you just got to reframe it. Most guys are looking at that stuff right now and they're calling it hassles.
Mm-hmm. Or chores, right? Or
Yeah, I just got so much to do. There's just so much hassle to my life. You go, wait. Those aren't hassles. Those are battles. And you are being trained as a warrior. And the only way you can really train warriors is to put them in a real fight.
Makes sense. Total sense. How about the second component of that, which is an adventure to live? I mean, you look around and guys aren't living adventures, right? They're stuck in cubicles and they're just beat up to death, literally, and they're just not experiencing anything exciting in life.
Totally. You know who's nailed this? Yeti coolers. If you get online and you watch any of the Yeti cooler films, that company is putting out these phenomenal short films, guys being guys out on adventures. And it may be a 3-minute film, but it grabs your soul. They understand adventure is a spiritual longing in the soul of every man. And the smaller adventures are stuff you just go do. We're gonna go take a backpacking trip. We're gonna go sailing this weekend. We're gonna go out and go spearfishing. We're gonna go bird hunting, and that stuff's great, and that stuff feeds your soul. But if you'll notice, your life begins to face bigger and bigger adventures. Will you take these risks? Adventures are always about risk taking. Are you going to start that company that you've been talking about? You're going to start that church that you've been dreaming of? You're going to start that after-school education program that you were talking about, Ryan? Like, entering into the larger scale adventures, it doesn't just nourish you, it calls you out. It calls you out. My son and I were just on a caribou hunt in the Northwest Territories. The best part was when everything went south. We were in this small boat with a guide, and we were coming across this lake, and the wind was blowing, and the whitecaps were heavy, and the rain was blowing sideways, and the bow line gets caught in the motor, and suddenly we are without power. The wind kicks the boat sideways immediately. The waves start coming in. I'm doing the quick analysis of, okay, I think I'm going to get hypothermia, but I'm pretty sure I can swim to shore. What do I grab when this boat sinks? And the guy looks at us and he says, can we paddle? Can we make it to shore? And so you pull the paddles out. One of them's half broken. We're paddling for all our lives. That was the best part of the trip.
Yeah,
wasn't the sunshine, right? It wasn't dessert. It was that. It was those environments because it calls you out as a man.
It is. It's so true. A couple of years ago, I took some boys in the community on a 17-mile high adventure hike. There was a couple points where it was miserable, and they were complaining, and they were tired, and they didn't want to hike, and they were sore, and they've got these 30 to 50-pound rucks that they're carrying around. But now it's been about 2 years, maybe even 3 years now, and they still talk about it. But like you said, they don't talk about doing s'mores at the fire. They talk about when it was raining and how we were tired and they didn't have any sleep, and they say it with a smile and a twinkle in their eye. It's pretty incredible to see and participate in.
Exactly. Bingo. You ask guys to tell you about some of the best moments in their lives. They're going to tell you stories like that.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about this third one. And I'm really curious. This is one of the things that I really wanted to address is when we talk about a beauty to rescue, obviously I think we're talking about women. But is it more than that? Is it different than that? Is it in addition to women? Help me understand this.
Okay, so the core of the masculine journey is the development of a genuine strength. And I mean a soul strength. I'm just talking about having big muscles, because I've met a lot of guys who, spend their life at the gym and they're cowards inside. It's the development of a genuine strength on behalf of others. Okay. And so I'm looking at this story, the SEAL team that went down to rescue Jessica Buchanan down in Somalia. She'd been taken by Somali pirates, and the SEALs come in and they kill all of the 9 heavily armed kidnappers. They free the gal Buchanan and a second aid worker, and then they're waiting for the extract, the helicopter, to come in and get them out of there. But they know they're still in danger, and they tell Buchanan to lie down on the ground, and the SEAL, they all lied down on top of her. They literally shielded her from gunshots with their own bodies. Like, that's it. That's the core. Now, they were rescuing a beauty, so to speak, but it wasn't their beauty.
Right.
They didn't even know this gal, right? They were just acting like men in a situation that needed them. So, yes, I think it's very core to how men love women. I think it's very core in dating and in marriage. Yep. But it's also deeply core to if you have daughters and who you are as a father to them. But then it goes out into the community. It goes out into those who are in a position to need you and you coming through for them.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. I mean, we're scratching the surface on the conversation that we could have. And of course, the book is incredible, and your follow-up work is incredible as well, Killing Lions and some of the other books that you've written. We are unfortunately bumping against time. As we wind down, John, I do want to ask you a couple additional questions. The first one, we've been talking about it, but if you had to wrap it up, what would you say it means to be a man?
It means to develop a genuine strength that you offer on behalf of others.
Love it. Simple, powerful. Love it. All right, how do we connect with you? How do we learn more about what you're doing, the work that you're up to, purchase a copy of the book? I know you've got a new book coming out as well. Is it? It might already be out. All Things New. Is the book been released yet?
Yeah. Came out in September. Yeah, guys, I would say ransomedheart.com is our website. You could also just type in Wild at Heart and it'll get you there. There's some killer podcasts. There's some series we have for men. There's some free films, a ton of free stuff on there, resources for men that'll really feed your soul.
We'll make sure we link everything up so the guys know exactly where to go. And then, of course, I'll keep recommending your book and your work to the guys that I work with. John, I really appreciate you. I've been looking to this conversation for months now, and you did not disappoint. And I'm really looking forward to building a relationship and following you more and learning more about your work. So appreciate you and your knowledge and insight and taking time with us today.
Yeah, I'm honored, Ryan. Let's do it again.
Man, there it is. Such a powerful conversation with someone I admire and respect, as John and his work have been instrumental in helping me become a better man. If you've enjoyed this show, I'd encourage you to pick up a copy of John's book. You will not be disappointed, and make sure that you let me and John know what you thought about the conversation by sharing with us on Twitter or Facebook, Instagram, wherever you are. That goes a long way in helping the show reach more men, and of course, I enjoyed the feedback from you. Also, if you need the links for the show, including a link to the book, Wild at Heart, you can do that at orderofman.com/139. Now remember, as I close things down today, we have our meetup coming up in Nashville, January 26th and 27th, 2018. And you can get registered for that at orderofman.com/Nashville. And then also make sure you take a look at the Iron Council, where you'll band with other men who are in the same battle as you. You can do that at orderofman.com/Iron Council, orderofman.com/Iron Council. Guys, I will look forward to talking with you on Friday for our Friday Field Notes. But until then, take action and become the man you are meant to be.
Thank you for listening to the Order of Man podcast. If you're ready to take charge of your life and be more of the man you were meant to be, we invite you to join the Order at orderofman.com.